Hello everyone and welcome back to History. I was recently going through a lot of my scripts and stuff from my previous documentaries that I uploaded, and I found a documentary that I realised I'd never actually made and published to YouTube. So yeah, this will be that documentary, and so today I'll be going over a hidden history of Medway. And to start, I'll be going over the tunnels located underneath the Medway towns. So, if you live in the Medway towns, especially in like central Chatham area near the High Street, you'll probably know about Fort Amherst. Fort Amherst was built in the late 1700s for the defence of Chatham Dockyard, and it was reused. It was used throughout the whole of the 19th century, and was last used around World War II as an operations centre for emergency responses throughout Medway. And people could also use it as an air raid shelter if needed. The fort was mainly above ground, but there's also a large network of tunnels underneath it. Now, some part of these tunnels is accessible to the public, and you can be given a tour around it. That's where these pictures on the screen currently come from. But a lot of the tunnels aren't. They're just not accessible, and they do apparently run for miles, and were built throughout many different periods. They were first started this construction in the 1700s, along with the rest of the fort, and they were later extended in the 1800s, and extended even further in the 1900s, like early 1900s. Fort Amherst is the most well-known fort, but there were also a few other forts which are lesser known in the area, including Fort Luton, Fort Clarence, Fort Darnett, Fort Horsted, Fort Borstal, Fort Pitt, and Fort Hoo. Fort Bridgewoods is located further away on the outskirts of Rochester. Many of these forts had tunnels underneath them, and because of this, Medway had many different tunnel systems located underneath it that stretch for miles. Most of these tunnel systems have not been properly mapped either, and I have heard of a local rumour that says that all the tunnels are linked, but I've also heard that this is not true, and I can't really find any evidence on it either. So there is a secret location. I'm not even trying to hold back the location from you, but I literally don't know where it is whatsoever. It's so secret. But it's called HMS Wildfire. The photos showed a tunnel in quite a good condition, but apparently some people broke into the tunnels and set fire to a lot of it, and yeah. And because of this, there is more than likely a lot of asbestos in the air, which, if you don't know, I'm sure most of you will know, but it is very cancer causing. The tunnels were built in the 1930s and were used by the Royal Navy for operations in the North Sea. The name HMS Wildfire was given to the tunnels after the Royal Naval Reserves took them over. The tunnels were shut when a dockyard shut in 1984, and they've now fallen into disrepair over the years because of people finding entrances into the tunnels. And according to a source I found online, they are also getting really hard to get into, with only a few entrances found like every decade or so. There's also one thing that I have found quite interesting whenever I pass through it and stuff. There's these doorways located on Dock Road. I'm not entirely sure what they are, and they could just be completely insignificant, but at the same time I can't really find any solid evidence of what they are either. I've heard that they're toilets, which does sound reasonable, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they have. If anyone has any what they are, if anyone has any information, I'd appreciate it if you commented it below. And they are quite close to Brompton Barracks as well, so you know, they could be something to do with that. I'm not entirely sure. A few miles away from these doorways on Chatham Hill, there is a filled-in tunnel and some filled-in holes. Again, there have been theories proposed by locals about what they are, but nothing has really been confirmed. The tunnel is located just behind the billboard in the picture, around here. One thing to note is that many of the holes would have been in people's back gardens because there used to be houses there. This could mean that they are like stuff like small Anderson shelters or something. They don't really look like that from the surface, as Anderson shelters had small inclines over the top of them. According to the memories of a person who used to live near the tunnel, it used to branch off into many different tunnels. Some of these tunnels were waterlogged, some were caved in, but they were very big. One of the tunnels ended up near the brook and another near the Great Lines, but these tunnels were eventually blocked off by the Ministry of Defence after they found out that people were going into the tunnels. Again, a few miles away in Rochester, along the Esplanade, used to be the Shorts factory where they used to make planes and stuff, which would like land. They used to make seaplanes which could take off and land on the water, and they used to test them on the River Medway and stuff. But after the factory used to expand quite a lot along the Esplanade and stuff, but after they realised that they couldn't really expand anymore on the ground, they decided to expand underground, and so they built a tunnel system. This tunnel system was built in 1941, but Shorts eventually left Rochester in 1947, and the site was sold to other companies, which also used the tunnels. Each of these companies eventually left too, though, with the last one leaving in the 1990s. And since then the tunnels have been completely abandoned. It was possible to access these tunnels, but all known entrances have been blocked by Medway Council. Next, I'll be going over a few underground places that not many people know about. Located on the Esplanade, just beside the bridge, were some old toilets. These toilets opened in 1914, which was the same year that the bridge was built, and they were used up until 1971. After this, the toilets were just abandoned and weren't used by the public. As the years went on, the ground above the toilets got more and more unstable, and in 2019 the toilets were filled with concrete so that there was no risk of collapse. The windows which led into the toilets can still be seen from the bridge, but they are also filled in. Located at St George's Centre, Chatham, there is a memorial for French prisoners of war. It is located on top of a burial site which contains apparently 521 bodies. These bodies were found on St Mary's Island and then moved to their present location. Next to the memorial is a strange white door. I can't find anything about this door. Haven't found any information or anything like that. But one possibility is that the bodies were buried in a small crypt and this door led to it. Another thing is that it could be a maintenance door for the nearby St George's Centre. Next, I'll be talking about abandoned railways. So there is a railway that goes from just after Gillingham Station all the way to the Asda at Dockside. This railway was used for transportation of materials and resources in and out of the dockyard. It was opened in 1877 and it was used for about 100 years, shutting in the 1970s. A few years after that, in the 80s, it was reopened but then disconnected again. It was reconnected so that freight could be hauled from the area during construction and redevelopment of the area, but was finally disconnected from the main line in 2015. It now remains abandoned and overgrown. Finally, I'll be talking about unknown events throughout the history of Medway. Rochester Castle is one of the most well-known places in the Medway towns, and many tourists travel to Medway just to see it. One thing that may not be as well known is the number of times that the castle was besieged. Throughout the castle's early history, it was besieged 3 times. Once during 1088, when Bishop Odo was against the king's rule, and the king came to Rochester to besiege it. It was besieged again in 1215 during the First Barons' War. During the siege, King John knocked down one of the towers, and it was rebuilt as a circular tower rather than square tower, which the other towers were. And the castle was last sieged in 1264 during the Second Barons' War. Next is the raid on the Medway. In 1667, Britain was at war with the Dutch, and a new dockyard at Chatham had recently had a few large expansions. Because of how close the Dutch were to this new dockyard, they were just across the channel pretty much, they decided to launch an attack on that dockyard, and it was devastating. It was really devastating. They first attacked Sheerness dockyard at the opening of the River Medway, and they then sailed down the Medway and attacked Chatham dockyard. They almost destroyed the entire dockyard, but they decided to rebuild the dockyard due to its importance and size. A lot of what they destroyed what they mainly destroyed was ships, and they did also take some trophies, which they still have in their museums. The last thing I'll be talking about is the Great Fires of Chatham. These fires took place in 1800 and 1820. They were located on Chatham High Street, and because the High Street was mostly made of wood, many buildings burnt down and were lost. On the last day of June 1800, a shed located on a riverbank caught fire. The shed contained flammable materials like oakum, which is dry rope-like fibre used on ships. The arrow in the picture points to the shed on a map. Because the tide was out, the water pumps could not get any water from the river, and the fire could not be put out. So the next 3 hours saw the complete destruction of all the buildings in the circled area. Dockyard firemen eventually brought the fire under control. Without the help of the military, the fire could have destroyed most of, if not all of Chatham. After the fire, many thieves looted the houses that had been left. Royal Marines helped stop them. Luckily, during this fire, only 4 people died. But after the fire, a relief was started, and many people donated towards the people who needed help. Major donors included the Dean of Rochester Cathedral, and 845 dockyard workers also donated various amounts, and the Royal Marines gave £55. In 1820, another fire happened, which was also very devastating. The fire started in William Hill's bakery. It started very quickly. The strong winds were not very helpful either when putting out the fire. Thankfully though, the fire was spotted very quickly, and alarms were raised within minutes of the fire starting. The Royal Marines were also alerted very quickly. Within a few hours of the fire starting, 34 houses and 13 warehouses were destroyed. At the time, the tides were in, and so the water pumps had lots of water. The fire reached as far as Rome House, which was located where Railway Street is today. This is because of strong winds dragging the hot embers away. New Road was also set on fire. After many hours, the flames were finally extinguished, and another relief fund was set up, just like the fund set up in 1800. Many people donated towards the rebuilding of Chatham, and the fund was a massive reason as to why Chatham was rebuilt so quickly. So yeah, that's the end of this documentary. These are all the fires that all the sources that I used. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you liked it.